So today we're going to discuss the cell organelles, their structure, and their function. So what do you know about the cell organelles from your previous work? Who wants to start the conversation? Pick any cell organelle, tell me what it does. And silence. Beautiful. Told you we're going to do cell organelle structure and function. I gave you a heads up. We're ready to go, and nothing. You watched the video. You did some work on cell organelles. What do you know? Cell organelles are specialized parts, like the organs of your body have specialized functions. Your heart pumps blood. Your brain does the processing of information and directs your body to do things like raise your hand or speak. Sometimes you don't control it, like your heart beating or your digestive process. But the point is that you have specialized structures in your body called organs, and that's why they gave the name the specialized structures within the cell organelles, which means tiny organs, because organs were discovered and known about long before people saw inside the cell and saw these little organelles. So that was a nice stall for you all to come up with an organelle and tell me a function. What do we got? Let's start with the easiest one. What's the nucleus? Grady.
It controls and regulates everything in the cell.
Yes, it controls the cell, right? In the video you saw, it was the boss, right? It's always referred to as the boss of the cell. So the nucleus is that structure within the middle. It's round. It's circular. They always show DNA inside of it or chromosomes inside of it, which is the genetic material of the cell. So it's important here, before we go on to other organelles, hint, hint, be prepared to contribute, to discuss how the nucleus is the boss or the mayor or some kind of control figure of the cell. Because the nucleus controls the all-important function of protein synthesis. The word synthesis, like in photosynthesis, means to make. In photosynthesis, it's light making, so using light to make food. Protein synthesis is the making of proteins. So your genetic information, your DNA, is the code of life. It is the instructional set for making proteins. Matter of fact, inside every one of your cells is a nucleus, because we are eukaryotes. Our cells have a nucleus. And in that nucleus is a full set of instructions to make a clone of you, a brand new you. But the nucleus does not do that. Every cell in your body is not making a new you. Every cell in your body has what we call differentiated. It takes on a specific role. Your skin cells work together as tissue to make skin. Your muscle cells work together to make muscle tissue. Your nerve cells work together to make nerve tissue, so on and so forth, to then form the organs and help your body function as a whole. Okay? So the reason every cell doesn't just make a clone of you is because the nucleus decides which set of instructions gets made. So if it's an eye cell, it takes the proteins that eye cells need and says, okay, cells, make these proteins. If it's a toe cell, it says, all right, listen, make this different set of proteins to be a toe. And that's how it works. And luckily, it doesn't get confused, because otherwise you'd have toes growing out of your eyeball. Anyone have toes growing out of their eyeball besides Peter? No, we're good? All right. Because I know I was going to say, anyone have toes out of your eyeball? Peter would be like, yeah, I do. Yeah. Because you always did that, right? All right. Anyway, so the nucleus has the DNA, the genetic material. It controls the cell by controlling protein synthesis. So let's go on to another organelle. Your choice. Okay. Yeah, Peyton.
The Golgi apparatus.
The Golgi apparatus. Very good. So the Golgi apparatus is a flattened sac. If you're looking at the same diagram as me, it's in the lower right corner. And what is the Golgi apparatus, Peyton?
It is
Okay. And well, the Golgi apparatus doesn't just store and modify things. It actually sends things for export from the cell. Export means to send out. Like if you're the United States and we want to export goods to Europe or goods to China, we're sending it over there, right? We're making it here, we're sending it out there. Okay? We do a lot more importing than exporting, but exporting means to send out. So cells need to communicate all the time with other cells, right? The reason your skin cells all act like skin cells, there's a communication there. Okay, so in order to communicate, it's done through chemical messaging. It's done through specialized proteins called enzymes, okay, and other compounds, and these have to be packaged for release. And so the packaging plant is the Golgi apparatus. And again, it looks like a thin set of flattened sacs towards the edge of the cell. And that makes sense, is towards the edge of the cell because it's going to be getting things out of the cell, right? Wouldn't make sense if it was hanging out in the middle of the cell, because then it would just mean it would take longer to transport things away. Okay? All right. And by the way, the little packages it makes are called vesicles. Vessicles. Okay? All right. What else? Give me another one. How about right outside the nucleus? Tell me about some of those things there. Okay, let's talk about the little tiny round structures. Anyone know what they're called? They look like little dots inside the cell. Okay, they're called the ribosomes. Okay, ribosomes. Anyone know what the ribosomes do? They actually synthesize the proteins. Okay, if you notice, they're outside the cell, right out, a lot of them on a structure called the endoplasmic reticulum that we'll talk about next. But the ribosome's job is simply to make proteins or synthesize proteins. And it makes sense that you would have a lot of them outside the nucleus because the nucleus is deciding which proteins get made. And so the ribosomes being in close proximity to the nucleus is very helpful. Okay. Why are they on a structure called the endoplasmic reticulum, making it rough endoplasmic reticulum? Because those little dots would make it look rough. If you ran your fingers across, you could imagine these little bulbousy dots all over it. It would feel kind of textured and rough. Okay, versus endoplasmic reticulum that does not have ribosomes, which is called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. What do you think the endoplasmic reticulum that had the ribosomes on it would do? Okay, well, its job is to process the proteins that are made in the ribosomes. The ribosomes get the proteins going, and then if you look at the endoplasmic reticulum, it's a series of network, right? It's like this, they kind of look similar to the Golgi in that you get kind of, they always draw it like these little sacs kind of going back and forth, a network of passageways. And so the proteins that get made have to be transported throughout the cell, and they get modified along the way. So the finishing touches get on there, and the proteins are ready to go. Now, the rough endoplasmic reticulum modifies and transports proteins, while the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for processing and transporting lipids, which are another really important organic compound within the cell. Okay? So, anyone want to bring up another organelle? Okay, so let's go and talk about the mitochondria. They look like they're these giant, they call them kidney shaped, and there's like these squiggly lines going throughout it. Anyone know what the mitochondria, its nickname, or what it does? It makes cellular energy. Very good. Remember when we talked about the characteristics of all living things, we said that all living things have cells to be alive, either unicellular or multicellular. And another important concept we said is that everything has to make energy. Every living thing is making energy all the time. So We know the process for making energy is called respiration, and that's where you take oxygen and you take glucose, right? Oxygen you're breathing in right now. The glucose is from the food that you ate, and your food gets broken down, sent in your blood. Your oxygen gets sent in your blood. Well, where's it going? It's going to every cell of your body because every cell is alive and doing work. And every cell is going to have these little structures called mitochondria that's going to take in that oxygen, take in that glucose, and going to make cellular energy. And the part of cellular energy is called a molecule called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. Okay? And so what kind of work will the cell do? Well, it will do things like make new cell organelles. It will do things like make those proteins happen, transport those proteins through the Golgi apparatus and be able to export them from the cell to communicate with other cells and things, right? And all of this work together that uses up this energy is your metabolism. And that's why you had that basic metabolic rate that we learned about when we did our metabolism log, right? The energy that we use on a daily basis. So the mitochondria makes the energy that the cell can use to do work. And you know how important it is for that mitochondria to get those substances and how important it is to make energy because you know you're breathing all the time. And how long can you live without breathing? A couple minutes, right? So that's how important it is you're constantly getting that oxygen. By the way, what waste products produced through respiration? That the mitochondria is kicking out of every cell of your body and you're expelling all the time. Do you just breathe in? What are you breathing out? Carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide. Okay? So that's how important the mitochondria is. That's what's going on. It's happening inside your cells, cellular respiration. All right, moving right along, you've got the cytoplasm is kind of the jelly-like substance between all the organelles. You can imagine if you're looking at the picture of the cell that the cell is not just an empty air-filled sac. There has to be something that occupies the space in between all of the different organelles. And that jelly-like substance, that fluidy substance, is called cytoplasm because it's not just water, right? There are things dissolved in it. In addition, so the cytoplasm provides shape, support, things flow throughout it, so it's involved in transport. It does all those things to the cell. What controls what gets in and out of the cell? That's right, the cell membrane. Okay? So plasma membrane, cell membrane, you can think of it as the gatekeeper. You can think of it as the security guard. Anything that makes you remember that it controls what gets in and out. Because when you look at the cell membrane, it's the layer that surrounds the outside of the cell, just like your skin surrounds the outside of your body and keeps infection and stuff out. So this cell membrane is keeping the insides of the cell in and the outsides of the cell out. And when the Golgi apparatus wants to decide to release a vesicle containing compounds to be exported from the cell membrane will either allow it or not, right? And then there are other things that will want to come into the cell, and the cell membrane will decide what gets in and what gets out. Okay? All right. There are some things that animal cells have that other cells don't have, like lysosomes and perioxysomes. Okay, and they're pretty much help to break down dead or worn out cell organelles. They contain enzymes, digestive enzymes, and enzymes help to catalyze or speed up reactions. They're specialized proteins. And so, just to give you an idea, you have digestive enzymes in your mouth and digestive enzymes in your stomach and throughout your digestive tract, and it's constantly breaking food down. So some enzymes are digestive, some enzymes build things up, but in this case, with the lysosomes, they're digestive enzymes helping to get rid of waste. Okay? And a couple of more organelles worth mentioning. I think we've talked about all of these that are here. A couple that you don't see on this picture are things like this cell wall, because animal cells don't have a cell wall, but a cell wall is a structural layer that plant cells have. It allows the cell to have shape. It allows the whole plant to actually have shape. I'm sure you've all seen green plants that don't have wood, right? They don't have bark or wood, but they are able to stand upright. For instance, grass. Blades of grass can stand upright because each cell has a structural cell wall made of a sugar called cellulose. So it provides structure for the cell. And the other one I want you to know about is the chloroplast, which are green structures. We'll learn about those when we talk more about plant cells, but chloroplasts are the organelles responsible for photosynthesis. If animal cells had chloroplasts, we would not need to eat other things. We would not be heterotrophs, but we are. But plants and other organisms that have chloroplasts are autotrophs. They use sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to make their own food. Okay? And the last thing a plant cell has an animal cell does is called a large vacuole. And the large vacuole helps to store a lot of water. So if you're a plant, you're photosynthesizing, you need a lot of water, so you have to have that water available all the time so that you can make food. And then because a plant makes food doesn't mean it doesn't respirate. It will then use some of its own food to make its energy for its cellular work. But luckily for us, plants will make more food than they eat. That's why we can eat plants for food. They'll also make more oxygen than they'll use. They'll make more oxygen in the process of photosynthesis than they'll use in respiration. And that's why plants contribute to oxygen in our atmosphere. And we know we need that very much. All right, I can see you're fading out, so that ends my discussion on cell organelles. That's a good basic understanding of some of the major ones. And hopefully that was helpful.